Hey, so welcome to project 7, and this painting here is what we're going to be painting today. See that gorgeous effect in the sky and the meadow? Oh my god. So let's have a look at the colors that we're going to be using for this one. So we start with transparent yellow, halo blue, indigo, paint gray, alizarin crimson, a little bit of violet, then dark green, cadmium orange, and lastly whitewash, as always. So if you're ready, let's get started with this painting. Alright, let us start. So we're going to mark the horizon line, which would be around 1/3 of our paper. So somewhere along there. And I'm not going to make it straight perfectly. Okay, so just going to make random, but it's okay. It absolutely doesn't matter. It won't be even visible whether it's going to be straight or not. So just a line, just make sure that it's not in an angle or any way. So I can see it's almost straight, isn't it? Okay, there you go. So this is what we're going to be starting with, nothing else. All right, and let's just get started, shall we? So we're going to apply water now to the whole of the paper. Yes, go ahead and apply to the whole of the paper, because it absolutely doesn't matter even if your horizon line is gone and that you apply over it. So just go ahead, apply water multiple times. We need to make sure that our paper stays wet. I know I say this absolutely every day, but that's because it's really important when we're painting with the wet on wet technique. Okay, so go ahead and keep your paper wet. I'm going to give my paper a little bit of an angle because I can see some pools of water forming, which now I'm going to get rid of by making use of gravity. So here, using gravity to have the water come down. Okay, and then I'm going to use my cloth to absorb the excess water. So here you go, just grabbing my cloth, and all that excess water is absorbed, and also along the other edges. Any amount of excess water is definitely dangerous because it can flow back into our paper and create, what is known as blooms or cauliflower effect, which we do not want, okay, at this point. And you can also use your brush to absorb the excess water. So that would be, make sure to dry your brush, then run along. That would also absorb the excess water. And I think I like the way it looks now. So we are going to start. Okay, the first color is obviously transparent orange. So it's a beautiful orange shade that we're going to grab right now. Okay, and let's go ahead, grab it nicely, and then we're going to put that at the horizon line. There you go. I just absolutely love this orange, So here, we're going to put that orange, start with it, so make it as vibrant as possible. Okay, there you go. Then we're going to start slowly, stop somewhere around there, and then we're going to take it upward and just some random strokes. These may be visible, may not be visible in the end. That's okay, but whatever peeps through, that would be enough for us. Okay, then here you go. The next color that we're going to be grabbing is phthalo blue. So here, just grabbing my phthalo blue, and now we're going to paint along the edges. So make sure your brush is nice and wet, because this is the first layer and we have a lot of layers to do. So when you add that watery paint onto your paper, you're actually essentially making sure that your paper stays wet more. But whereas if you add in a dry paint, it also means that you're absorbing excess water back from the paper, which we do not want, obviously. So again, while you're doing this process, get rid of all the whites at this point. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so here you go, trying, and then obviously some of the orange is only going to remain, because those areas where it meets, it's also going to form like a slightly greenish color. It's okay, absolutely okay. Okay, so here you go. I've brought it down up until the orange. Now we're going to mix the same, okay? And in order to do that mixture, you've brought it out until there. So now you're just going to use whatever is there on the paper to kind of mix it and get that slightly greenish hue. You do not want to introduce more of the blue over to that region and, ruin our orange. So because if you bring in a lot of that blue, then the entire thing is going to turn into a greenish shade, which we do not want. Okay, maybe a little bit, teeny tiny bit, because you don't want it to be too lightened as well. Like this one, I know that when it's dried, because watercolor is dry lighter, it's going to be very, very light. Okay, and also we're going to be covering it up with something else, so it's nothing to worry about. There you go, that's done. Now time for the next part, which is we're going to grab a little bit of indigo and we're going to go over the top now to create that galaxy effect. Okay, so now again only a little bit of the phthalo blue is going to be popping up. So the reason why we add that phthalo blue first is it's kind of like the underpainting. Okay, so there again, bringing that across. But now, careful, you do not want the indigo to go below the phthalo blue range at all. Okay, so all the denser colors towards the bottom, and then as you come towards the bottom, sorry, I said wrong. So all the denser colors towards the top, and as you come towards the bottom, you want it to be lighter. So there you go, it's absolutely light at that point. Okay, so again here, dense colors to the top. Okay, and then also we want to grab in the indigo, and then you're going to put like these dotted stuff right there. Can you see? Like, it's as if you're like forming the galaxy, and then these dotted stuff that you're doing, you can actually bring it down over to some areas of the orange. See that? Okay, just a teeny tiny bit, but again, this process that we're doing, we're going to be using the pointed tip of our brush. Okay, so here I'm just bringing that down at random. Okay, something of that sort. All right. And then you can see all of that color is still popping through, and then make it like as though there is some kind of explosion of the galaxy effect in the sky. All right, so here, that's gorgeous, isn't it? Now we're going to grab in paint scrape before our things dry up. Okay, so I'm going to grab the paint scrape, but I'm first grabbing it in a wet on dry manner because I want to put in, like, some cloudy shapes here. And I know that my orange and that region has started to dry because I haven't worked on it for a long time. So in order for me to make sure that it's not dried up, I'm picking up a very, very dry amount of the paint scrape. So always look at your paper before you start working on anything. If you observe areas that are starting to dry out, that's where we need to work first. Okay, so see, just adding a teeny tiny amount of clouds into that region, and I think that's enough for that cloudy part. Now we're going to grab in the denser amount of paint spray again, and we're going to put it along towards the edges on top of the indigo. So again, it's not going to be much visible. It looks dark now, but when it dries up, that will be visible. That area will be darker. Okay, so here, just grabbing paint spray. So that area has actually got 3 layers of colors, isn't it? So it's got like phthalo blue, then it's got indigo, and then it's got the paint spray, but it's going to be darker. Okay, now we need to put in some more clouds. So what we're going to do is let me just switch my brush, because this is still a bit of a larger brush. So probably let me grab my size 2 brush. Okay, because we're going to put in some clouds onto the bottom part, and for that we're going to grab in violet. But I know this paint is very, very wet, so let me dry my brush and just grab only the wet paint. Okay, and then we're going to put some nice clouds there. So it's going to turn into a like a brownish shade, and that's okay. Okay, so see, and probably it's going to be a little bit wet on dry as well, so that's okay, but try and mimic the shape of some clouds as much as you can. And then maybe a bit of alizarin as well as you approach over to this side, so it's a bit reddish clouds that we want over to this side. See how we've got that nice reddish touch, okay, because it's like approaching towards the center where there is more light, so you want to give it a little bit of the lighter clouds. And as you go towards the right, maybe go with the violet. Okay, so it's like a blend of those two there, just some nice beautiful strokes. Okay, so see, even if you applied water towards the bottom, we were not working on there, and it turned out absolutely well. Let's also just put some white strokes in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab white paint directly from the tube itself, because that is what is going to be the densest. Okay, so just going to run my brush along inside there itself. Okay, so I'll make sure that the paint that I have is the most densest. Okay, and then you're going to put that in there, and you can see your paper is still wet, and it's going to like pop out somehow some places, because I think my brush is actually excess water as well. But then this is what I talked about, you know, the little bit of the cauliflower effect, but that's okay at this point because we're just getting some nice lighter strokes. Okay, some bright strokes into that galaxy part. That's what we've achieved. Now we will add more towards the bottom. I guess maybe let's add a little bit to the bottom now, just a teeny tiny bit. Want to make sure that my brush is dry, and then just grabbing that paint, and I'm going to put like little bit there, so you can see my stroke is actually literally dry at this point. Okay, but I'm not bothered. All right, there you go, and that's just our galaxy, the background layer done. So all we got to do now is like we're gonna completely dry this up so that we can paint the foreground. All right, there you go, it's dried up now. So before we proceed to the bottom part, what we're gonna quickly do is we're gonna add in a little bit of a mountain at that back region, and for that we're going to just grab indigo. Okay, so it's just a very dense amount of indigo. The only reason is I do not want it to be looking like black, although when you apply that much dense indigo it might look black, but then there is still that possibility that when it dries up it might not have that black effect, which is why I'm using this indigo. Okay, so a very dense amount over to on top of that orange. Okay, see, I can already see it looks a little bit of the on the bluish side than the entire black, so it's okay. And there you go, just grabbing, and then as we come towards the right, I want it to be like very short. Okay, so that's why, and then maybe, you know, just some perforations towards the top there. I think that's much better. I've got the land area, I mean the background mountain area done now. So now we're going to paint the bottom part. And in order to paint the bottom part, I'm just going to quickly wet that. Not up until the very top. You only need a little bit of wet. You can always connect both areas together. So I've wet that region, and now grabbing my larger brush again, I'm going to paint that bottom part. So in order to paint that bottom part, okay, what I am going to do is I am going to grab in the orange itself, okay, because it's not water or anything, but it's where the denser flowers are creating that dense color at the back. We will also fill it up, okay, but that's not to worry. Okay, there you go, just filled in with the orange to start with. Then I'm going to come down and add in a mixture of my dark green and paint gray, so very dark dense color. Okay, there you go, that's how I'm starting now. Indigo, did I say dark green and paint gray, not indigo, sorry. So here what you could also do is like paint with the darker green first. Okay, so just grabbing my darker green. So this is actually my darker green. You can see that it's very dense. And then I am going to paint and mix that up together. Okay, let me grab it. Nice and dense. And then now I'm going to grab the paint gray so that it'll be over the top. I'll make that green darker, which is exactly what I want. Now my brush has got this dark green color. What I'm going to do is, you know, the area where we actually painted and separated the orange out, it's not meant to be separated. So what we're going to do is we're going to like add in like drops, okay, little drops, so that the areas excluding the drop would actually look like flowers. Okay, so this is like the negative painting effect. This is what is called as negative painting. So all those areas which are not the orange, okay, will look like flowers. Okay, so also we do not want it to be extremely flat, like a flat brush stroke. So I'm just making sure I get rid of that flatness in my brush stroke. Okay, that's why. And then here, just gonna go ahead and add these dots. And you also want to make sure that the areas where the orange is actually visible needs to be lesser than the greenish actually. Okay, so this is, I just wanted to cover this technique, which is why I brought this in. Okay, there you go. This area is a little bit dry, but I think that's okay. So I'm not bothered as to how big my brush strokes are, because we only want a very little of the orange to be visible, because those are like really far off flowers, okay, be peeking through the orange. And they also need to be absolutely smaller, so go ahead and fit in. There you see. So now that's that area is done. But you know, the area where this is actually very lighter there, let me get rid of that lighter region. Okay, so those flowers there are like very, very light. Now we need to add flowers to the bottom part. So what we're going to do is we are going to grab cadmium orange at this point and add some background ones in there. Then we'll add it later on as well. Okay, so here I've got some spare paper, so I'm just going to grab my cadmium orange. I want to make sure that it's nice and wet on my paper. Then I'm going to drop it in like that, and see how it spreads the paint and comes on top of the paper. And this is because cadmium orange is opaque, so you can also use a gouache paint instead if that works for you. Okay, so you want to make it appear closer in all those areas as well, so it's like a very dense and a beautiful field that we've got here. Okay, see how gorgeous it already looks. All right, so now we're going to dry this up so that we can add in more flowers over the top. Okay, all right, here you go. Here it is after it's completely dried out, and you see all that magic that was there while the paper was still wet is already gone. Even for the white region, see how very light it has become, and see how all of it has just like gone into the background, but I can still see it, and I can see that it's like very, very lighter in here. So now we're going to make those denser, not those exact ones. So those exact ones are the ones that are going to be like under the shadow. We are going to add some fresh, nice ones. So go ahead, grab in your orange, okay, the cadmium orange, and go ahead and fit in a lot. So we're going to put in a lot, not on the same ones, okay, let the background ones be right there. And make sure that the ones towards the back that you add, okay, all those ones to the back, we want to make it lighter, okay, or smaller as well. Okay, so being small is very, very important. So we'll make them smaller, and then as we come towards the bottom is we're going to make the really, really larger ones. Okay, so see a lot of flowers already there, and then to give you into perspective, when I speak larger, I mean this, it's really large, and this is where you can actually, and probably, you know, go ahead and make the shape of a petal perhaps. Okay, so see, just you don't need to make it perfectly, but just mimicking the shape of the petal would actually do. Okay, see, so those are now like bigger flowers, bigger flower clusters. You don't want to do it over the top of and cover all of the work that we did with the splatters. Okay, just go. Okay, this is where you can actually get lost in the painting and, you know, go on for ever and ever, honestly. Because there's just lot and lot of flowers that you can add and, you know, possibly never stop. But we've got to stop somehow, so just fill in as much as you can, you know, make it as beautiful as you can. Okay, there you go. Now, in order to make this attractive, I'm going to place a lot more of the smaller ones. So smaller ones means very, very smaller dots towards the back. Okay. So see, extremely smaller ones to the back. So the part where I added that orange at the back was actually me trying to make this process of adding the dots easier. Otherwise, if that orange was not there, then we would have spent a lot of time adding these dots to the back, because at that back point there, you need a lot of dots, because it's further, so the flowers actually look denser, although it's not, and that when it's coming closer to the viewer, that's when it, because of perspective, how it would look, you know, scattered and more spaced apart. So towards the further end, it should actually look really dense together. See, that's why I'm adding a lot more of the dense ones. Probably we should have brought that orange more towards the bottom, isn't it? But then that means we would have added those green dots more. Anyway, this process is just, I would say, really, really, really calming. For me, at least. I don't know about you. Okay, there you go. That's a lot of flowers added. Okay, you can go ahead and add like some really big ones. And probably create like the shape or the petal of a flower. See, some of them has been done that way. And you can also go ahead and put in some wet on dry splatters. So that would be us grabbing the color again and then just literally putting those splatters. And it's better if you can add in a lot of splatters towards the back as well. Make sure that you close off the edge of the paper there. Okay, see, that's a lot of flower, and I still got a little bit on the indigo region that we added, so I need to get rid of that. Probably grab in a little bit more indigo and, you know, absorb that. So now we're almost done. Now the best thing is to add in a little bit of white strokes now. So I'm going to grab in my white paint. The splattering process is always tricky. My hand covered in orange. Always. There you go. We're going to grab the white paint now, first of all. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in a little sun in our painting, okay? So it would go right there, just above that little alizarin stroke that we did, and make a teeny tiny circle. Okay, that's it. Very, very teeny tiny circle, and this is probably what's actually creating that light effect over there. Okay, and in order to bring that light effect into a nice look, we're going to grab some white paint, but we want to make sure that it's nice and watery. Okay, just a teeny tiny amount, and then you're going to put some more white strokes. So these are going to dry up like the ones before as well, but then there will still be some light. So whenever somebody looks at your painting closely, that's when they're all going to see like these beautiful details in your painting, like, oh, look at that. So I'm also just softening out the edges. So you see, it's a very, very nice white stroke. That's appeared over there, but then I'm softening out the edges. Okay, we can do the same at some of the other places. So I'm putting a little bit of a white there, a little bit of white there. Maybe, just go ahead, add in some white to some of the areas where we added the wet on wet white. Okay, and then only to some of them you need to mix. I'm not going to mix the ones towards the top. Mix as in soften the edge. So just soften the edge of these ones. Okay, there you go. All right, so that would be the sky part. And now for the last and final thing in our painting, the white starry splatters. So here, just grabbing my white paint, and just like we discussed in the techniques, I am gonna do the splatters, but this time cover up the bottom. We don't want stars in the meadow, right? So there. There you go. Lots of stars added, and we're actually done. So anything towards the edges? Nope, nothing. So safe to remove the tape. Let's go ahead and remove it. And here you go. Here's the final painting. So I hope you enjoyed painting this with me, and thank you so much for joining me today.